Well, good evening everybody, and a very warm welcome to our Christingle service tonight. It's brilliant that you're able to join us. I hope you've been able to make a Christingle either at school or at home, and tonight's our opportunity to gather together and to light them, and we're going to hear a few carols and we're going to hear some stories as we go along tonight. So it's brilliant that you're here for our Christingle service. And the first carol we're going to sing tonight is called the Calypso Carol. Well, folks, one of the things I enjoy most at the Christingle service is getting the chance to tell you a wee story. Now, I hope that those of you in Primary 1 will remember me coming to tell you the actual Christmas story, and we're going to refer to that later, the story about the birth of Jesus. But there are lots of other stories that come alongside that story at Christmas time, and one of my favourites of all time is the story of the Grinch and how the Grinch tried to steal Christmas. So what I'm going to do for you now is to read you the story of how the Grinch stole Christmas. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch who lived just north of Whoville did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why, no one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. Whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown at the warm lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath. And they're hanging their stockings, he snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow is Christmas, it's practically here. Then he growled with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming, I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming. For tomorrow he knew all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early, they'd rush for their toys, and then, oh the noise, 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 that's one thing he hated. The noise, 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 noise! And the Whos, young and old, would sit down to a feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, 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 feast. They would feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beast, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing and stand hand in hand, and the Whos would start singing. They'd sing, and they'd sing, and they'd sing, 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 sing. And the more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it now. I must stop this Christmas from coming. But how? Then he got an idea. An awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. I know just what to do, the Grinch laughed in his throat. And he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat, and he chuckled and clucked, what a great Grinchy trick! With this coat and this hat, I look just like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer. The Grinch looked around, but since reindeer are scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said, if I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max, then he took some red thread, and he tied a big horn on the top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max. Then the Grinch said, giddy up! And the sleigh started down toward the homes where the Whos lay a snooze in their town. All their windows were dark. Quiet snow filled the air. All the Whos were all dreaming sweet dreams without care. When he came to the first little house on the square, this is stop number 1, the old Grinchy Claus hissed, and he climbed to the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once for a moment or two, then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue, where the little Who stockings all hung in a row. These stockings, he grinned, are the first things to go. Then he slithered and slunk, with a smile most unpleasant, around the whole room, and he took every present, pop guns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorn and plums, and he stuffed them in bags. Then the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all the bags one by one up the chimbley. Then he slunk to the icebox. He took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding. He took the roast beast. He cleaned out that icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took their last can of Who hash. And he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee. And now, grinned the Grinch, I will stuff up the tree. And the Grinch grabbed the tree, and he started to shove, when he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast, and he saw a small Who, little Cindy Lou Who, who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter, who'd got out of bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said, Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why? But you know, that old Grinch was so smart and so slick. He thought up a lie, and he thought it up quick. My sweet little tot, the fake Santa Claus lied. There's a light on this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there, then I'll bring it back here. And his fib fooled the child. Then he patted her head, and he got her a drink, and he sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. Then the last thing he took was the log for the fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, the old liar. On their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire, and the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. It was dawn. All the Who's still abed, all the Who's still a snooze when he packed up his sled, packed it up with their presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags and the tinsel, the trimmings, the trappings, 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet. He rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it. Pooh-pooh to the Who's, he was grinchishly humming. They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two, then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry, boo-hoo. That's a noise, grinned the Grinch, that I simply must hear. So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear, and he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, then it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, the sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry. Very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing, without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons, it came without tags, it came without packages, boxes or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light, and he brought back the toys and the food for the feast. And he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast. Well, I hope you like that wee story. That's one of my Christmas favourites. I love reading that story and quite often use it in school and in different services. And I think it's got a really important message. It reminds us that Christmas isn't all about the trappings. It's not all about the food and the presents and the snow and all of those kind of things. Christmas is about being together. It's about love. It's about sharing those things together more than it is the stuff that we get. Although the stuff's important, that's part of the fun. But actually it's the love that binds us together that makes Christmas such an important time. And the Grinch was trying to stop all of that. The Grinch wanted to stop Christmas and didn't succeed. And part of the reason I wanted to use that story again this year is because I think in a way COVID has been trying to stop Christmas. Maybe it hasn't meant to, but that's really what's happening. Because families are finding it harder to be together and to plan and to organise things for Christmas. Some of us are wondering if loved ones are going to get home and be with us. Some are wondering how we're going to get through Christmas and do all the things that we need to do and get the shopping and make sure that everybody has a nice time. So yeah, in the COVID crisis just now, it feels like COVID's trying to stop Christmas. But I can tell you now that it won't. Because Christmas is about blessing the people that we love however we can and showing them how important they are to us. And you know what? Love will find a way to do that. It may have to change this year. It may be different in some ways. But love will find a way to make sure that message gets through to the people that we most love and care about. So yeah, Christmas will happen even though it may be different. And it's important for me as a minister and as a Christian to remember that behind all the stuff that we do at Christmas, there's a real story of Mary and Joseph and their long 80-mile trudge to Bethlehem for Mary to have her baby, and the nature of this baby, who this baby was, who was coming into the world. And Christians believe he was nothing less than God himself coming to be with us. God loved us. God wanted to show his love in the best way that he could. And the best way was for him to come to us in the person of that special baby to show us what God is really like. And now we don't have to guess anymore. If we want to know what God's like, the first thing we do is to look at Jesus and work out what he's like. And that's what God is like. I sometimes do this little game with boys and girls in school to make that point. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to pause the video for a moment. Go and get yourself a sheet of paper. Go and get yourself a crayon or a pen. And I'll see you back here in 2 ticks. Right, you're back. Good. Okay, now here's what I want you to do. I'm going to give you instructions. I want you to follow these carefully, okay? So I want you to do some drawing for me. First thing I want you to draw is a square, a big square. Make it a big square, all right? And then within that square, I want you to draw 2 more squares, any way you like. And then in those 2 squares, both of those 2 squares, I want you to draw 2 lines, okay? I'll give you a wee minute to do that. So far you've got a great big square, 2 smaller squares inside, and then 2 lines inside each square, okay? Inside the big square, I want you to now draw a rectangle. If you don't know what a rectangle is, get someone to help you, and they'll show you. So draw your rectangle. And then inside the rectangle, I want you to draw a circle. Okay, draw a circle. On one side of the big square that you started with, I want you now to draw a triangle. Okay, draw a triangle. And then lastly, what I want you to do is to draw a square on the side of that triangle. And when you've done that, you should be finished. That's everything I wanted you to draw. Now, I wonder what your picture looks like. I wish I could see through the lens of your telly or your tablet or whatever you're watching on and see what you've drawn. What I was trying to get you to draw was this. A house. That's got all the things that I was trying to get you to draw, okay? But wouldn't it have been easier if I'd been able to show you this and said, right, now draw your big square, draw your 2 wee squares with the lines, draw your rectangle, your circle, your triangle, and your wee square on the side. If you'd known that this was what you were aiming for, then you'd have probably drawn it much better and done a better job. And I think part of the reason we have Christmas is so that God can show us what he wants humanity to look like, what he wants us to be like. And that's what Jesus is. He's the picture that we want to try and follow as we live our lives, so that we make a good picture with our lives and live them well. So Jesus is, Christians believe, God with us in human form to show us what God is like, and also to show us what he wants us to become like as people, to be loving and kind and good and trustworthy and brave as Jesus was. Tonight is our Christingle service, and I hope that you've been able to make a Christingle. And just to remind you what the Christingle is about, it's a little symbol of the story of Jesus. And here's a cool video I found that shows how to make a Christingle and what it means.
Let's make our Christingle. Who can we find to help us? We'll start with the orange. The orange represents the whole world. Next, we're going to add red tape around the middle of the orange. This represents God's love going all the way around the earth. We're going to take some sweets and put them on cocktail sticks. Then we're going to stick them in 4 points in the orange. This represents all the amazing good gifts that God has given us. We're going to carefully make a cut in the top of the orange, and then we're going to place the candle in the top. The candle represents Jesus, the light of the world. And now our Christingle is complete.
And what we're going to do now, with a wee bit of help from whatever grown-up is with you just now, we're going to light our Christingles together.
Jesus makes us shine with a pure, clear light, like a little candle burning in the night. In this world of darkness, so let us shine. You and your small corner of lying mine. Jesus makes us shine, first of all for Him. While He sees and knows it, if our light goes dim, He looks down from heaven to see us shine. You in your small corner of dying mind. Jesus makes us shine when we're all around. Many nights of darkness in the world are found. Sin and want and sorrow, so we must shine. You in your small corner of dying mind.
We're going to finish with another carol which is called It Was on a Starry Night.
It's on a starry night, when the hills were bright, earth lay sleeping, sleeping calm and still. And in a castle shed, in a manger bed, the boy was born, King of all the world. And all the angels sang for Him, the bells of heaven rang for Him, for a boy was born, King of all the world. And all the angels sang for Him, the bells of heaven rang for Him, for a boy was born, King of all the world. Soon the shepherds came that way, where the baby lay, and were kneeling by His side, to celebrate His birth, bringing peace on earth. A boy was born, King of all the world. And all the angels sang for Him, the bells of heaven rang for Him, for a boy was born, King of all the world. And all the angels sang for Him, the bells of heaven rang for Him, for a boy was born, King of all the world.
Well, folks, that's our time together finished now. I hope that you've enjoyed the stories and the songs and making your Christingle and lighting it tonight. And I hope that as we go forwards into Christmas, that you'll remember that amongst all the stuff that's happening, Christmas is going to come, even if COVID tries to stop it, because we're going to be able to share love with the people who matter most to us. And Christmas is the time of year when God shared His very self with the human family in the man that we know called Jesus. So thank you for listening. And if I don't see you before then, a very happy Christmas to one and all. God bless. Bye-bye.